The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of the New Dawn as Captain Lee Hayen gripped his command chair. The massive colony ship, home to 50,000 sleeping families, shuddered violently as another power surge ripped through its systems. Outside the reinforced windows, the twisted light of a dying neutron star painted everything in sickly colors. "Captain, we're losing main power." Chief Engineer Park Minji's voice crackled through the COM system from deep within the ship's engine rooms. Her hands flew across control panels that sparked and smoked around her. "The neutron star's radiation is frying our circuits faster than I can replace them." Lee Hoon had been a ship captain for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this nightmare. The New Dawn was supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement, a massive arc, carrying entire families to a new world beyond Earth's solar system. Now it was becoming their tomb. "How long do we have?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Maybe 6 hours before total system failure," Park Minji replied, her voice tight with fear she was trying to hide. "The gravitational pull is getting stronger. We're being dragged toward that thing, and our engines can't fight it anymore." Far across the galaxy, on a monitoring station that floated like a metal moon around the planet Kepler-4 for to see, Senior Communications, Officer Vexstar was having what he considered a boring day. His crystalline body, made of living mineral that caught and reflected light, stood nearly 8 feet tall at his monitoring station. The Vorthon Collective had assigned him to watch for emergency signals from the Outer Rim worlds, but most days, nothing interesting happened. That changed when his equipment picked up a strange transmission. The signal was crude and weak, using old electromagnetic waves instead of the advanced quantum communication that civilized species used. Vexstar's crystal face twisted into what might have been a frown as he listened to the desperate message. "Is Captain Lee Hoon of the human colony vessel New Dawn?" The transmission began. "We are in critical danger near the Titan's Edge neutron star. Our engines have failed, and we cannot escape the gravitational pull. We have 50,000 civilians aboard, including 15,000 children. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need immediate assistance." Vexstar made a sound like breaking glass, which was how his species laughed. Humans were one of the newest species discovered by the Galactic Council, and they were pathetically primitive. They couldn't even travel faster than light, crawling between stars at speeds that would take decades to cross a single sector of space, another primitive species begging for help they don't deserve. He muttered to himself, preparing to delete the transmission. The Galactic Council's rules were clear. Only member species received emergency assistance. And humans hadn't even applied for membership yet. But as Vexstar reached for the delete button, something in the background of the transmission made him pause. Behind Captain Lee Hayen's steady voice, he could hear other sounds. The hum of failing machinery, the urgent conversations of crew members trying to save their ship, and underneath it all, something that made even his crystalline heart feel strange. The sound of human children crying, in another part of the monitoring station. Junior Analyst Kilmesh was supposed to be cataloging routine shipping reports, but his sensitive Altarian hearing had picked up the human distress call. And unlike his superior, he found himself deeply troubled by what he heard. The Altarian Republic was known for their advanced technology and logical thinking. Had always been different from his fellow Altarians, where they saw numbers and statistics. He saw living beings facing death. As he listened to the human transmission again, couldn't ignore the desperation in their voices. Quietly, hoping Vexstar wouldn't notice, Kilmesh copied the transmission coordinates into his personal files. It was against protocol, but something about the human situation reminded him of his own species' darkest hour. Centuries ago, when they had faced extinction and been saved only by the kindness of others, back on the New Dawn. The situation was getting worse by the minute. The ship's artificial gravity kept flickering on and off, sending loose objects floating through the corridors. Emergency crews ran through the halls, trying to keep essential systems running while families huddled in their quarters, terrified. But trying to stay calm for their children, Captain Lee Han walked through the ship's residential sections, where thousands of people lived in small but comfortable homes. He saw parents holding their children close, whispering that everything would be okay even though they knew it probably wouldn't be. He saw elderly couples who had spent their life savings for a chance at a new world, now facing the possibility that they would never see it. Captain Park Minji's voice came through his personal communicator. "I've managed to boost our transmission power. Our distress signal should reach further now." "Good work," Li Han replied, though he knew that even if their message traveled farther, it was unlikely anyone would come to help. Humans were alone in this part of the galaxy, and they had learned that most alien species saw them as insignificant newcomers. As the New Dawn continued its slow spiral toward the neutron star, its desperate signal continued broadcasting into the void, carrying the hopes and fears of 50,000 human souls into the vast emptiness of space. 3 days had crawled by since the New Dawn sent its desperate cry for help into the void of space. By every calculation known to galactic science, the human colony ship should have been crushed and consumed by the neutron star's incredible gravity by now. The Galactic Council's monitoring stations had written off the 50,000 humans as another tragic loss in the universe's endless dance of death and destruction, but something impossible was happening in the Titan's Edge system. Sensors across 3 different sectors suddenly lit up with readings that made no sense. 17 objects were moving toward the neutron star at tremendous speed, burning through space on trails of superheated plasma. The sensor operators checked their equipment twice, then 3 times, certain there had to be some mistake. These weren't advanced Council rescue ships with their sleek designs and faster-than-light capabilities. These were primitive human vessels, cobbled together from whatever materials their species could find. Mining ships that had been stripped of their drilling equipment and fitted with extra engines. Cargo haulers that normally carried supplies between human colonies, now loaded with rescue equipment instead of trade goods. Even old military vessels that should have been scrapped years ago were racing toward certain death. At the head of this impossible fleet flew the Defiance, a heavy cruiser that had seen better decades. Its hull was scarred from countless battles and patched with metal from a dozen different ships. On its bridge stood Admiral Kim Jinwoo, a man whose weathered face told the story of a lifetime spent in the darkness between stars. "Distance to the New Dawn?" he asked, his voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Still 18 hours at maximum burn, sir," replied Navigator O.C. Ekman, his fingers dancing across control panels that sparked occasionally from the strain they were putting on the ship's systems. "The gravitational distortion is making navigation extremely difficult. It's like trying to plot a course through a hurricane made of space-time itself." Communications Officer Choi Nari looked up from her station, sweat beading on her forehead from the effort of maintaining contact with all 17 ships. "Admiral, I'm having trouble keeping everyone coordinated. The neutron star's radiation is interfering with our communications. Some of the smaller ships are starting to fall behind." Kim Jinwoo nodded grimly. He had known from the beginning that not all of them would make it. The human fleet was pushing their primitive technology far beyond its safe limits, and ships were already showing signs of critical system failures, but they had to try. 50,000 people were counting on them, and humans had never been good at abandoning their own. "Tell the captains to redistribute their crews if necessary," he ordered. "If a ship can't keep up, transfer everyone to vessels that can. We're not leaving anyone behind." Back on the Galactic Council monitoring station, Senior Communications, Officer Vexstar was watching the human rescue attempt with what could only be described as amused disbelief. His crystalline body caught and reflected the light from the tactical displays showing the human fleet's progress. "Look at this," he called to his colleagues, his voice carrying the sound of tinkling glass. "The humans are actually trying to rescue their people." 17 ships racing toward a neutron star with technology that belongs in a museum. Other alien officers gathered around Vexstar's station, watching the tactical display with fascination. The Galactic Council's military experts were running calculations on their advanced computers. The results were always the same, even if they somehow reached the colony ship, said Commander Zeftel from the Hegemony Defense Force. They lack the power to escape the neutron star's gravitational field. Their engines simply aren't strong enough. "How long do you think they'll survive once they enter the gravity well?" asked another officer. Vexter's crystal face gleamed as he considered the question. "I give them maybe 6 hours before the tidal forces tear their ships apart. Would anyone like to place a wager on the exact time? Soon, alien officers throughout the station were betting on various aspects of the human rescue attempt. How many ships would make it to the new dawn? How long would they survive in the neutron star's influence? Would they even attempt to save anyone? Or would they flee when they realized the impossibility of their situation? But as they watched the human fleet continue its desperate journey, something began to change in the observers' attitudes. The humans weren't slowing down as they approached the danger zone. If anything, they were pushing their ships even harder, its engines glowing white-hot from the strain. On the Defiance, Admiral Kim Jin-woo received a priority message from the mining ship Iron Will. Captain Park Tae-yeon's face appeared on the communication screen, his expression grim. "Admiral, we're losing engine power," Park Tae-yeon reported. "Our reactor is overheating, and we won't be able to maintain speed much longer. Transfer your crew to the Steadfast," Kim Jin-woo ordered immediately. "Strip everything useful from your ship and abandon it." "Sir, the Iron Will has served my family for 3 generations," Park Tae-yeon protested. "And now it's going to serve 50,000 people by helping us save them," Kim Jin-woo replied firmly. "Sometimes the greatest service a ship can perform is knowing when to let go." As they watched, the alien observers saw something they had never witnessed before. Instead of individual ships looking out for themselves, the entire human fleet began working as a single organism. When ships failed, their crews transferred to other vessels, and supplies ran low, they were shared equally among all ships. When navigation became impossible for smaller vessels, the larger ships took them in tow. Even though it slowed everyone down, Communications Officer Choi Nari was working around the clock, coordinating not just between ships, but between families. She helped connect parents with children who were on different vessels, allowing them to speak what might be their final words to each other. She organized supply transfers so that ships with extra medical equipment could help those with injured crew members. "This is unprecedented," whispered junior analyst Kilmesh, who had been watching the rescue attempt with growing amazement. "They're sacrificing their own resources and safety for people they've never even met." The human fleet continued an impossible journey, leaving a trail of abandoned ships and shared hope in their wake. They raced against time and physics itself to reach their people before it was too late. The neutron star's deadly embrace was unlike anything the human rescue fleet had ever encountered. As the 17 ships pushed deeper into the gravitational chaos, the very fabric of space seemed to twist and writhe around them, the stars. Incredible density warped reality itself, creating tidal forces that stretched and compressed their vessels like toys in the hands of an angry giant. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Kim Jin-woo watched his fleet's status displays turn from yellow to red with alarming speed. The smaller mining ship Deep Horizon was the first to buckle under the pressure. Its captain, Lee Min-soo, managed to send one final transmission before his vessel's hull began to crack. "Admiral, we're losing structural integrity." Lee Min-soo's voice crackled through the interference. "Our ship won't make it another hour in this gravity well." What happened next shocked even the veteran admiral. Instead of ordering an evacuation that would save the crew but abandon their mission, Lee Min-soo made a different choice. "We're transferring all our engine components to the mountain's edge," he announced. "Our reactor core is still stable, and they need the extra power more than we need to keep our ship in one piece." Within minutes, the crew of the Deep Horizon was cutting into their own ship with plasma torches, carefully removing every component that might help the other vessels. They worked with the desperate efficiency of people who knew time was running out, transferring not just machinery, but also their life support systems, navigation equipment, and even the plating from their hull. The alien observers watching from their safe monitoring stations couldn't believe what they were seeing. In their experience, when ships faced destruction, crews fought to save themselves first. The idea of deliberately destroying your own vessel to help others was completely foreign to their understanding of survival. "They're committing suicide," whispered Commander Zeptile, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "They're actually tearing apart their own ships." But the humans weren't committing suicide. They were transforming their entire fleet into something that had never existed before. A single, hybrid organism built from the pieces of many different ships. The Defiance became the most dramatic example of this impossible transformation. As other vessels failed around it, their crews didn't just abandon ship, they brought their technology with them. Engineer Yoon Dae-yoon found himself working with 7 different types of engines, all jury-rigged together in ways that should have been impossible. We've got Martian fusion drives connected to lunar ion propulsion systems, reported to Admiral Kim Jin-woo, wiping sweat from his forehead as he worked in the sweltering engine room. I'm running power conduits through the weapons bay and using the hydroponics bay as a coolant reservoir. This ship shouldn't be able to fly, but somehow it's working. The neutron star's radiation was playing havoc with their electronic systems. Computer screens flickered and died. Navigation systems gave impossible readings. And communication equipment sparked and failed. Most civilized species would have been helpless without their advanced technology, but humans had learned to be resourceful. Long before they reached the stars, when the main computers died, engineer Yoon Dae-yoon didn't panic. Instead, he opened a storage locker that most ships hadn't carried for decades and pulled out something that made the alien observers gasp in amazement: mechanical calculators and slide rules. If electronics won't work, we'll do it the old way, he announced to his team. They began calculating navigation and engineering problems by hand, using tools that their great-grandparents had relied on. The work was slower and more difficult, but it was reliable in ways that advanced technology sometimes wasn't. Throughout the fleet, similar scenes of desperate innovation were playing out. When the life support systems began failing under the neutron star's radiation, humans didn't fight each other for the remaining oxygen. Instead, they organized something that left the alien watchers speechless. Medical Officer Han Soyoung had studied the crew manifests carefully. She knew exactly how many people were aboard each ship and how much oxygen they had left. What she proposed was medically sound, but emotionally devastating. We need volunteers for induced comas, she announced over the fleet's communication system. By putting half our people into medical sleep, we can double our oxygen reserves for those who remain awake to complete the rescue. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Veterans stepped forward first, saying they had lived full lives and were willing to sleep so younger crew members could stay conscious. Parents volunteered so their children would have more air to breathe. Engineers who had completed their modifications to the ships offered to go under so that pilots and navigators could stay alert for the dangerous approach to the new dawn. Within hours, the corridors of the rescue ships were filled with sleeping figures in medical pods, their life signs monitored by the skeletal crews who remained awake. It was a level of organized self-sacrifice that the alien observers had never witnessed before. Look at them, junior analyst, Kilmesh whispered to his colleagues. They're sharing oxygen masks, taking turns breathing, so that others can have a few more minutes of consciousness. In our species, individuals would fight to the death for that kind of resource. Even more shocking was what happened when crew members began to succumb to radiation sickness. Instead of isolating the sick, to prevent the spread of contamination, healthy humans voluntarily took over their duties. Communications Officer Choi Nari worked 18-hour shifts when her backup fell ill, staying conscious through sheer willpower and stimulants that were slowly poisoning her system. The Defiance itself had become something unprecedented, a ship built from the bones of a dozen other vessels, powered by incompatible technologies that somehow worked together, and crewed by people who had chosen to sacrifice everything for strangers they had never met. As the hybrid fleet continued its approach to the doomed new dawn, the alien observers began to realize they were witnessing something that would change their understanding of what intelligent life could accomplish when pushed to its absolute limits. The moment Admiral Kim Jin-woo's hybrid fleet finally reached the new dawn, the true scope of their impossible task became clear. The colony ship was massive, nearly 3 kilometers long and carrying the weight of 50,000 lives. Hung in space like a wounded giant, its hull scarred by radiation and its engines dark and lifeless. Visual contact with the new dawn, reported navigator Kong Yoonji, her voice tight with exhaustion after days of navigating through the neutron star's gravitational chaos. But Admiral, the ship is too big. Even with all our vessels combined, We don't have enough power to tow her out of the gravity well. Admiral Kim Gin-woo stared at the tactical display, his weathered face grim.
Ow.
The numbers didn't lie. The New Dawn had a mass of over 2 million tons, and their cobbled-together rescue fleet simply didn't have the engine power to pull something that heavy away from a neutron star's grip. By every law of physics and engineering, the rescue was impossible. But humans had never been particularly good at accepting the impossible. "Get me Engineer Park Ji-hoon," the Admiral ordered. Within moments, the brilliant engineer's face appeared on the communication screen. Park Ji-hoon looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes red from radiation exposure and exhaustion, but his mind was still sharp. "Admiral, I've been running calculations on our power output versus the colony ship's mass," Park Ji-hoon began. "We can't tow her, but I think there might be another way." What Park Ji-hoon proposed next made even the veteran admiral pause in disbelief. Instead of fighting against the neutron star's gravitational pull, he wanted to use it. The idea was to channel the star's incredible gravitational energy directly into their ship's power cores, essentially turning the cosmic disaster into the largest slingshot ever attempted. "You want us to fly closer to that thing?" Admiral Kim Jin-woo asked, pointing at the neutron star that was slowly consuming everything around it. "Not just closer," Park Ji-hoon replied, his voice steady despite the madness of what he was suggesting. "We need to get close enough to tap into the gravitational gradient differential. The energy differential between the star's pull on our engines versus our bows could generate enough power to accelerate both us and the New Dawn to escape velocity." The alien observers watching from their monitoring stations were stunned into silence. What the humans were proposing violated every principle of safe space travel that had been established over millions of years of galactic civilization. "They want to use the neutron star as a power source," Commander Zefdel whispered, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "That's like trying to harness a supernova. The energy differential would tear their ships apart atom by atom." Were already beginning to implement their impossible plan. Pilot Jang Min-ho, widely considered one of the best navigators in human space, took manual control of the lead ship formation. His hands moved across the control surfaces with practiced precision, but even he was sweating as he began the most dangerous flying maneuver ever attempted. "Beginning descent into the gradient zone," Jang Min-ho announced, his voice calm, despite the fact that he was piloting his ship toward certain death. "All vessels match my vector and maintain formation. We drift even a few kilometers out of position, the tidal forces will rip us apart." The first part of the maneuver involved linking all the remaining rescue ships together in a chain formation. Navigator Kong Yoonji coordinated this delicate process, using magnetic grapples and physical cables to connect vessels that had never been designed to work together. The Defiance took point position, followed by the mining ship Iron Mountain. Then the converted freighter Stellar Pride, and so on until all 9 remaining vessels formed a single, flexible chain stretching over 5 kilometers through space. As they descended deeper into the neutron star's influence, the ships began to experience forces that no human technology had ever been designed to handle. The gravitational differential between the front and back of their chain was so extreme that it was like stretching a rubber band between 2 different universes. Hull stress approaching critical levels, Engineer Park Ji-hoon reported from deep within the Defiance. "I'm redistributing power from life support to structural integrity fields, but I don't know how long we can hold together." The plan required split-second timing and precision that would have been impossible for most species. As they swung around the neutron star, each ship had to fire its engines at exactly the right moment to capture and redirect the gravitational energy. Too early, and they would be pulled into the star's surface. Too late, and they would lose the velocity needed to escape. Jang Min-ho was flying by instinct now, his human reflexes pushed beyond their normal limits by stimulants and sheer determination. The G-forces pressing down on the crew were so intense that most alien species would have been crushed into paste. But humans had evolved on a heavy world, and their bodies could endure punishment that would kill others. Initiating energy transfer. In 3.2.1, Now, Park Ji-hoon shouted over the roar of overloaded systems. What happened next defied every computer model and scientific prediction. The human ships didn't just survive the energy transfer, they thrived on it. Neutron stars' gravitational field poured power into their hybrid engines, like water rushing through a broken dam. Ships that had been limping along on failing systems suddenly blazed with energy they had never possessed before. But the price was terrible. The converted cargo hauler Mountain's dream couldn't handle the stress. Its hull buckled and twisted. As forces beyond comprehension tore it apart, Captain Oh Yoon-ho managed to transfer ship's momentum to the vessels behind him before his ship exploded in a burst of superheated plasma. Mountain's dream is gone, Navigator Kong Yoon-ji reported, her voice breaking slightly. But her sacrifice gave us the exact velocity vector we needed. 2 more ships were lost during the 18-hour maneuver, their crews making the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the chain formation remained stable. Each time a vessel was destroyed, its final act was to transfer its momentum and energy to the survivors. Like runners in a relay race passing a torch made of pure physics, the alien observers watched in stunned silence as the human rescue fleet performed the impossible, using nothing but primitive technology, desperate courage, a willingness to sacrifice everything for others. They had turned a cosmic disaster into salvation. They did it, junior analyst, Kilmesh whispered, staring at his displays in amazement. They actually used a neutron star as a slingshot. The gravitational assist is working. As the surviving ships began their final burn away from the neutron star, pulling the massive new dawn behind them, the humans had accomplished something that would be remembered throughout galactic history. They had defied the very laws of physics through nothing more than courage, ingenuity, and an absolute refusal to abandon their own. The moment the human rescue fleet finally broke free from the neutron star's deadly embrace, cheer that could be heard across 3 star systems erupted from the surviving ships. Against every law of physics, every computer calculation, and every expert prediction, they had done the impossible. The massive bulk of the New Dawn had been torn apart during the escape, its hull finally succumbing to the incredible stresses of their desperate maneuver. But its precious cargo lived. 40,000 human souls now floated in the darkness between stars, crammed into vessels that had never been designed to carry so many people. The rescue fleet had been reduced to just 6 ships, their hulls scarred and their systems pushed far beyond safe operating limits. But they were alive and free. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Kim Gi-woo should have been celebrating their victory. Instead, he was lying on a medical gurney, his left arm completely destroyed by radiation exposure during the final hours of the rescue. The ship's medical officer had sedated him twice, but he kept waking up and demanding status reports. "Admiral, you need to rest," urged Dr. Leuna, checking the bandages where his arm used to be. "You've lost a lot of blood, and the radiation exposure is still affecting your system." "Not until everyone is accounted for," Admiral Kim Jin-woo replied weakly, trying to sit up despite the restraining straps. "How many survivors from the New Dawn? What's our supply situation? Are the families being reunited?" From his gurney, the wounded admiral continued to coordinate the massive relief effort. His voice was weak, but his commands were clear and decisive. He organized supply transfers between ships, coordinated medical care for the injured, and personally approved every major decision affecting the survivors' welfare. The alien observers watching from their monitoring stations were witnessing something that challenged their fundamental understanding of intelligent behavior. In their experience, when resources became scarce, individuals fought for survival. The strong took from the weak, and genetic relatives were prioritized over strangers. But the humans were doing something completely different. Dr. Leuna had taken charge of food distribution across the entire fleet, and her first order shocked the alien xenobiologists studying the rescue footage. "Children eat first," she announced over the communication system. "I don't care which ship they came from originally, or who their parents are. Every child gets a full meal before any adult takes a bite." Supply Officer Bae Januk was implementing this policy with mathematical precision. He had calculated exactly how much food, water, and medical supplies were available across all 6 ships. then divided everything equally among the survivors. Families who had lost everything during the New Dawn's destruction received the same rations as crew members who had risked their lives in the rescue. "Look at this," Junior Analyst Kilmesh whispered to his colleagues, pointing at his monitoring displays. "A child from the colony ship is sharing her food ration with an injured rescue pilot. They're not even the same family, but she's treating him like her own grandfather." The scenes playing out across the human fleet defied every study of scarcity behavior that galactic science had ever conducted. Parents were giving their own food to children they had never met before. Engineers who had worked for days without sleep were sharing their bunks with families who had lost their homes. Medical supplies were distributed based on need rather than ability to pay or social status. Commander Zeftel, from the Hegemony Defense Force, was studying the footage with 4 of his eyes while making notes with his other appendages. "In our species, genetic competition would have started immediately," he observed. "Family groups would form alliances, resources would be hoarded, and the weak would be abandoned. But these humans are actively caring for individuals who share no genetic relationship with them." The story of humanity's impossible rescue was spreading across the galactic communication networks faster than any news story in recorded history. Species that had never heard of humans before were suddenly fascinated by these primitive beings who had accomplished the impossible through sheer determination and mutual cooperation. On the waterworld of Aquatica Prime, the dolphin-like cetacean council interrupted their session to watch the rescue footage. The crystalline beings of the Vorthan Collective, normally focused only on their own geometric perfection, found themselves moved by the humans' willingness to sacrifice for others. Even the machine intelligences of the Synthetic Republic paused their calculations to analyze what they called an unprecedented display of cross-genetic altruism. But perhaps the most dramatic change occurred in Senior Communications Officer Vexstar himself. The same being who had dismissed the human distress call as primitive whining was now studying every frame of the rescue footage with obsessive fascination. "How did they know?" he asked his subordinates, his crystalline voice filled with something that might have been wonder. "How did they know that individual sacrifice for group survival would actually work? Our computer models predicted total social breakdown under those conditions." As reports of the rescue continued to flood the galactic networks, something unprecedented began to happen. Species that had never involved themselves in council politics started demanding that humanity be granted immediate membership. The artistic collectives of the Andromeda Spiral sent formal petitions. The trade guilds of the Outer Rim submitted economic proposals. Even the mysterious energy beings from the galactic core transmitted messages of support. The pressure became so intense that the Galactic Council was forced to call an emergency session. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Station, all of them wanting to discuss the same topic, humanity. When the debate began, Senior Communications Officer Vexstar surprised everyone by requesting permission to speak first. He had never addressed the full council before, but now he stood before the greatest gathering of intelligent life in the galaxy with a message that would change everything. "Honored representatives," Vexter began, his crystalline form catching and reflecting the light from hundreds of different star systems. 3 days ago, I dismissed a human distress call as the pathetic plea of a primitive species. I was wrong. He activated the holographic display system, showing the assembled delegates the full footage of the human rescue operation. As the images played, the vast chamber fell completely silent. "We have watched a species accomplish the impossible not through superior technology, but through superior character," Vexstar continued. "They have shown us that true strength comes not from advanced weapons or faster ships, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. Perhaps it is we who have something to learn from humanity." The vote for human membership in the Galactic Council was unanimous.